Hello, everyone. It's Dan King here from Fireside Strategic. We interview CEOs in the Fireside Chat series that combine razor sharp strategy and human centric leadership to build great organizations. Our goal is to unpack insights that can help other C suite leaders and business owners grow their companies. Right now, we're very excited to chat with Renee Moorfield, CEO of WisdomWorks. Renee, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
So, I would love to learn what prompted you to start WisdomWorks.
That could be a very long question, but the short answer is my husband and I started it over 22 years ago. We had been in the corporate world ourselves for, at that point, probably 12 or so years, and really felt like the conversation about well-being, looking at people as whole people rather than just human resources, was not being tackled by organizations. And so we wanted to start a company that addressed how do we support human thriving and how do we design workplaces and how do we design ways of leading that really foster human thriving. So that's why we started WisdomWorks.
Awesome. What are a few of the biggest incentives for companies not to care about human thriving? What's going on? Why wouldn't they care?
I think in the past, and even now as well, so many of our organizations are designed around making money, making a product and making a profit. And that's not a bad thing, in a capitalistic model or capitalistic organization. There is this design for how do we make money. But more and more, well, what that does is though it channels our thinking into creating systems, processes, and structures that are all about, at the end of the day, making money. They aren't thinking about what's the how. How do we get there in such a way that we can make money in a way that is truly sustainable and actually allows us to innovate in a way that maybe we hadn't before because we were so focused on making money. I do think that has shifted, in this day and age. I think we've seen over the last 3 decades a real shift in consciousness and a shift in priorities and the agendas of leaders to realize our most important asset truly is our people. And I mean, I've been hearing that mantra for now 30 years from organizations, but there's one thing to have a mantra and there's another thing to act on it. And I think organizations now are starting to get very serious about maybe even re-looking at, number one, the purpose of the organization, not always just about making money. It's also about something greater than that, which and an organization has to figure out what that is. But for many organizations, it's about advancing well-being of people, advancing well-being of the planet. So money becomes a facilitator, subservient to a larger aim. And the moment you get there, in your consciousness, in your mission, in your values, and you start to say, what does that mean for everything else? That then shifts structures, systems, designs. It shifts everything else. And it has to shift how you lead, because now your leadership is all about not management and control, but it's about how do I tap in to the potentials and the talents of these people that have chosen to work for this organization. So it really shifts a lot of how we lead. And that's really the sweet spot of our work.
Very cool. One of the powerful words you just used was sustainability. I'm really curious if you could unpack the different ways in which a not purely profit-focused company can build in a more sustainable direction. Like, in what ways does sustainability show up if you move a company in that direction?
Yeah, so the word sustainability, just like the word well-being, is used in thousands of different ways now. And I'm not sure that there's a super common definition of it. So a lot of organizations, when they say sustainability, they really are talking about environmental practices and how do we, are we using our natural resources, our common resources, so earth, air, water, and so forth. Are we using those in a way that we're not just taking, but we are becoming a net positive company? So that's one way to think of sustainability, and that's incredibly important. Another way to think about sustainability is, are we operating in a way that refreshes the people that work here? So it just
Mm,
doesn't take energy from people. So the question I'm always
yeah.
asking, and this is more in the space of our work, the question that we're always asking leaders is, how do you create an organization that people can leave that organization, leave their work more refreshed, more capable, more grown as human
Yeah.
beings, more evolved as human beings, more well than when they came? And I know that question does not have one right answer. It's a question. It's supposed to be a provocative question. But for organizations, and I think there are more now that are saying, okay, I'm up for that. I'm up for that. If I'm about a purpose greater than making money,
Yeah.
I'm about a purpose that is about supporting the world and evolving, then I'm up for being an organization that evolves. And that's a whole nother way to think about sustainability. And in
Yeah.
that light, sustainability is very connected with the word thriving. We use the word thriving a lot, or well-being. That's where they start to become very basically synonyms of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a powerful vision. It's a powerful transformation for a company to go through. And I really like the use of this language of people feeling more energized as
Mhm.
a result of working somewhere. I'm curious if you could talk about, I know for folks that may be listening who might want to work with Wisdom Works, is there a case study or two you could share of, I'm not sure whether you can get into specifics or not, you're probably limited to some degree, but curious if you could give us a case study or two of some work that you did in order to produce this kind of transformation in an organization.
Sure. There's actually two situations I can think of. One, I can talk about more specifics because we're going to be sharing the specifics with the Consumer Goods Forum soon, so it's going to be public what we did. But another would be with a global pharmaceutical company that I can share generalities, but I wouldn't be able to share details. So I'll start with that one. With this global pharma company, they are very clear about more of an evolutionary purpose. So they're very clear that they want to create an organization that is truly about the well-being of people everywhere in the world. And we've worked with a number of pharmaceuticals, and this is a pharmaceutical that really means it. It really means it. Like we trust when we speak with them that they are very committed in an authentic way to that purpose. So that's one thing. They've also been in the middle of, when you get there and you want to be an organization that brings this out in people, they've also committed to very self-managed processes in a global company. So they're close to 100,000 employees. So that shift alone is enormous, from moving from a more, in the past, a more hierarchical organization to one that is more self-managed and people can truly make autonomous decisions about their work. But they're in these self-managed teams, these ad hoc teams that come together and break apart as needed. So much more agile as an organization. So in
Mm,
the middle of all that work, when we started working with them, so our work has been about a third piece, and that is about wholeness. So when you think of principles of these more progressive thinking organizations, clarity of purpose, being more self-managed so that people can really bring their talents to bear to do work. But the third piece that most organizations haven't tackled is, how do we support people in bringing their whole selves to work? And then again, like I said before, and leave work more refreshed than when they came. That's a question they haven't tackled yet. And so we have been working with their executive team to first have that leadership team engage in a holistic assessment of thriving. We have an assessment that looks at 19 different psychometrics of well-being that most people haven't ever looked at before for themselves. And they are going through a very transformative journey themselves. And out of
mm,
that, starting to think about, through the journey and their personal insights, how they can start to engage the rest of the organization. So we are literally in the middle of that process. Like, I've now
mm,
up to where we are. And some of the comments we've heard from the executive team so far are things like, as a leader, I've been a leader for decades. I've had lots of leadership development, and I'm in a very well-resourced organization, but no one's ever asked me, nor have I been thinking about my whole life. That this is one of the first times I've actually thought of myself as a whole person that has challenges and that has relationship aspirations and that has another side of myself beyond just my definition as a leader. So that's an example. And I know it's pretty general what I just shared with you because I can't share the details, but that gives you a flavor with that one. With the other organization, this is with a brand called Melina Bianco. And Melina Bianco is the growth brand. It's a bakery brand in the company Barilla, the Barilla Group. So the pasta bakery company that's really, really well known. They are very committed to regenerative farming and a whole bunch of truly sustainability practices from an environmental perspective. But the head of their brand team, given the pandemic, I think she could see that people have just been struggling, not just her team, people in general. We're all, collectively have been faced with the challenges of the pandemic. And she wanted to use this as an opportunity to help individuals on the team itself, as well as her brand, to go through a path of kind of their reflection and evolution through the lens of well-being. So we just did a 5-month journey with that brand team, 28 people on the team, where individuals were exploring how they were doing today, as well as what they could do to support their own well-being. They were also putting rituals, practices, routines in place to connect as a team in a new way. So imagine you've been working with the same people live for, before the pandemic, and then all of a sudden pandemic hits. Now you're all remote, and they're the interstitial tissue that keeps us connected. There's no more hallway coffee conversations. There's no more, let's just go to lunch together. There's none of that. And so we started to look at, as a team, how could you more consciously support the well-being of each other through this. So they did that. And then they also started looking at the brand, the Melina Bianco brand, and asking the question, how could we be an invitation to well-being for our consumers in a more conscious and a proactive way? And so by the end of that journey, there was really progress on all three of those levels, measurable progress. It was super exciting. So that's another example of how do you, in the work that we do, we are not interested in just inspiring people to think about well-being. We're interested in a shift in consciousness and a shift in practice. So we're all about the embodiment of new ways of being and new ways of operating with each other as individuals and as people.
Yeah. A lot of richness to unpack in both of those case studies. I mean, certainly one thing that jumps out at me is when we have that transformation, that shift to moving from a place of I am a leader and that is all I am at work, to this more all-encompassing whole person sort of perspective. And one of the challenges, and in my experience, one of the reasons that a lot of organizations may be a little reluctant to go in that direction is it may require confrontation with some challenging truths, right?
Sure.
And I think, we talk about this notion of being refreshed at work. Well, in order to be refreshed, we have to be in touch with ourselves. We have to be in touch with the uncomfortable parts of ourselves and what our employees may not love about working at the company.
For sure. We just had someone the other day. We also certify people in our assessment system so they can use it, in their organizations themselves in the way that they see fit. And we had someone in the program last week say exactly what you said. And their metaphor was, what this calls us to do, what this kind of journey calls us to do, is to look in the mirror and to put a mirror in front of us. And sometimes we don't like what we see. And that's all of us, by the way. Just because me and my team do this kind of work, we are all super clear that we're on the journey as well. We're bringing some expertise, but we have to every day also look in the mirror and make some, hard decisions about, maybe it's time to make some changes in my own life to support thriving of myself, to support my family, to support, my partnership, etc. So yes, the looking in the mirror, the willing to have the courage to do that, the willing to be vulnerable about that, the willingness to ask for support from others. These are just those three things alone are very counter what most leaders in particular, but I would say most people in the Western world, that most of us learned as far as our kind of bias is to want to be in control.
Yes.
And, so this is asking for a shift, but the opportunity for that shift is to be more authentic, to show up more real, to be living from a foundation that's set up for more learning and growth rather than stifling our own learning. So I think the opportunity way outweighs the reason not to go there. And I actually think with the pandemic, as much suffering as the pandemic has caused, which is a lot, all of us have been touched by it in very different ways. But as much suffering as it's caused, I think it has also been an accelerant to people asking these questions and basically saying, am I really using my life energy in the way that matters to me? Because this is precious. This life, this moment, this connection, this is a precious time, and we can't take that for granted. So I think it accelerated these conversations, and I'm excited about that for all of us.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. And just the other day, my business partner and I were talking about the fact that I can be a little energetic, and I'll find a new idea, and I'll talk about it enthusiastically. But as the more assertive personality, that may mean that I'm sometimes taking up space and making it harder for her to express her true feelings. She may want to be supportive and say, oh, that idea is great. I think it's great. But have to be very conscious that I may be diminishing her ability to respond with agency and with truth, right? So there's this, when we can openly talk about these things, then yes, we create the potential for shifts. And I think you're right that the pandemic has opened up those possibilities because of sort of the extreme force of it, right?
Right.
So I love all of that. And speaking of the mirror, I'm curious, if you were to reflect on the journey of building Wisdom Works, what shifts have come to mind for either you as a leader or the company that you've, as a result of the work you do for others and getting good at that work, some shifts that you have over the years realized you needed to make?
That's a great question. And I am super clear, actually, of a big shift I've had to make, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. And I have been conscious of it and actively working on it. It's something that is always on my mind. And that's the shift that I just mentioned to you. And that is not to, when I get stressed, my natural knee-jerk reaction is to want to control things. And I am aware of that, and I am aware that, kind of like you, I'm pretty energetic and have lots of ideas, and I can see possibilities really quickly, at how things are gonna. And so I start pushing, and I have realized through a number of, for me, a significant health challenge I had a number of years ago, that I can directly relate that to me pushing too hard. And luckily, having people around me, a team around me, that we had created such a safe environment to be honest with each other, that I had team members around me that work for Wisdom Works that said, you are your own problem. Basically, you are the one that needs to make some changes. We need to change the system for sure, but you need to make some changes yourself. So I feel grateful for the people who can, for those people who are able to say that to me. And that was a big wake up call for me. And I guess now in my 50s, I don't know if I don't want to say it's age, but I do think age has a little bit to do with it, of just seeing, okay, this has been now going on for 22 years. You've had Wisdom Works, and it's continued to grow. And even before that, you were doing this kind of work. So instead of willing it, instead of trying to willpower, can you allow some things to unfold and start to move more naturally with where there is already energy to unfold? And so that skill of trusting the process of kind of really trusting myself more. It hasn't ever been about trusting people. I've always been very when someone is working with WisdomWorks, I start with trust and I want them to shine. So that's not been an issue. It's been myself and control to a more generative, trusting, and allowing things to unfold kind of orientation.
I think as an idea person, we can get very attached to our ideas. And
Right.
there's this automatic way that we impose them on people, on situations, right? And there's this place of being able to, and I think I've done my health damage too for these reasons. I think I resonate with that so much. And when you can trust that, the idea will work or not work on its own merits, and we can enable, yes, we can speak to the idea and defend it, but we also need to trust that others will have their own reactions to it.
Right.
And, there may be a lot to learn from their reactions.
Well, it also may be it also may come in the form of, most leaders learn how to create very clear goals and strategies for getting there. And that's been old management training, old management training. And I think there's absolutely a great value in having a clear vision and getting clear on goals. I really think there's value in that, but getting attached to those goals and getting attached to the vision where it becomes, if you don't achieve it, now there's something wrong with you, or there's something if your identity becomes that vision. Yep. That has been, to me, that is a significant shift for leaders. And it's certainly one that I've experienced myself. So we may have a vision. What if we don't achieve all those things? Is that okay? And is it also, do we have enough spaciousness to allow something else, maybe even greater, to happen that couldn't have happened because we were so narrowly focused on very specific goals? So just being more spacious about leading, and hopefully giving more room for others to lead as well. Mm-hmm. But, I think those have been some big shifts for me.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful. And I'm curious in terms of the company, in terms of WisdomWorks. So would you say, well, maybe let me ask this. What are sort of the goals for the future? So you mentioned that you've been building the business for 22 years now. What's next for it?
Well, I believe what's next for it is finding the partner or partners that support. We've built a lot of intellectual property and a lot of assets that we have now piloted, used. We know what's working. We know, so we really, is from a thought leadership perspective, I feel really proud of the work that we've done. I think there is going to be a partner or other organizations that are better than we are at scaling and making things. And I have never had a desire personally to build a big company. That's just not that does nothing for me personally, but I am interested in a significant impact. And I am interested in this work to support leaders who can lead from a place of well-being and generativity rather than fear and stress and reactivity. That, I do believe there will be, for many years to come, a lot of work to be done in our world for the evolution of leadership into more healthier, conscious ways of leading. And I want to be a part of that. And I want us to be a part of that. So it's, finding the right partners for that. It's also certifying others. So I think I told you that we are certifying others to do similar work that we're doing. Because, as I said, I don't have any designs on building this big organization, but and other people in their own context, whether it's university settings, nonprofits, community settings, small organizations, places that we don't normally work. We're normally working with global companies. They are taking this kind of thought work and integrating into those settings in a way that is creative, and I would have never thought of if I don't know those settings. So that I love that way of amplifying is really through other people, and through other and partners. So I think that's what's next for us.
Really interesting. So for you, and it's we have all these conversations with CEOs, and so often we hear we want to grow our companies, right? That's a big theme, and it's a big part of what we do as business. But it sounds like for you, the priority isn't necessarily to grow the company, at least in a conventional way. The focus is much more on let's get the message out, let's get the ideas that ultimately have impact out into the world at a greater scale.
Ideas, capabilities, and impact. It's really more about, if we are fundamentally about building, supporting a healthier, a different consciousness and capability for healthier leadership, let's get that out. Let's find avenues to support that, the growth of that in the world. And I am, as much as I'm proud of what we've done so far, I am not so egotistical or insular to think that we're the only ones thinking about this. There are a number of other, and that's what's exciting, actually. I think when the time is ripe for something like this, and I feel like the time is very ripe now, just like with any new innovation, you find that a lot of people are thinking about it. And it's just those people need to find each other. And, I think the old story of Thomas Edison and the invention of the light bulb, we all think that he invented the light bulb, but then you go look and you find out in 8 or 9 places around the world, the light bulb was being invented at the same time. So it's a shift in consciousness that that then filters into new ways of organizing ourselves, and new ways of relating to each other, and new ways of relating to ourselves. And that's what that's what our work is all about.
Very, very cool. So as we move towards the end of our time together, Renee, we love to end on a human note. So when you're not building this great company, and when you're not thinking about how you can scale the impact, and basically when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I am either on a hiking trail, or I'm on my bike. I am either with a really dear friend or with my husband, who is also a really dear friend. Or I'm visiting family or reading a book. Really the things for me that bring me the most joy are actually pretty simple things.
Very cool. And lastly, are there any social media handles or anything you would like listeners to take a look at if they want to follow you and WisdomWorks?
If they want to follow you, you'll find me at Renee Moorfield on Instagram, as well as LinkedIn, Facebook. Same with WisdomWorks Group. So I would look for WisdomWorks Group, for GRP is on most of our handles. And then bewellleadwell.com or wisdom-works.com is the website.
Awesome. Well, listen, pleasure to have you. Great conversation. Really, really appreciated it. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate what you're doing.